For decades, the herbicides 2,4,5-T and 2,4-D were made in New Plymouth and sprayed all over New Zealand. And for decades, many New Zealanders have blamed the dioxin contained in these chemicals for deaths, illnesses and birth defects. Successive government reports have said there's not enough evidence to make a direct link. But that hasn't washed with many people, especially those who lived near the Ivan Watkins Dow manufacturing plant. They have talked of a cover-up, one of the biggest cover-ups in New Zealand's history. Over a year ago, we began talking to these people, to families who believe they've suffered from exposure to 2,4,5-T and 2,4-D. Their views and their personal struggles are at the heart of this story.
Well, it's stuffed me, full stop. You know, it's shagged my business developing. My health's been wretched all the way along. I think probably it's buggered my marriages. Now it's gone on to my kids. My parents' father died early, my mother died early, my brother died. It's just everyone. It's just...
Gary Hooper believes his family is typical of hundreds who have been poisoned and ignored. They all have something in common. They lived or worked in or near the Ivan Watkins Dow chemical plant in New Plymouth, or they were in direct contact with the agricultural chemicals 2,4,5-T or 2,4-D.
There's a lot of people sick here, yeah. A lot of people. But there's a lot of people around that area that are dead, you know, my age, younger.
Gary Hooper now lives in Whangarei, but he spent most of his life in New Plymouth. His parents built a house in the early 60s in the new subdivision of Paritutu. At around the same time, the Ivan Watkins herbicide plant also moved to Paritutu, near the coastline, a K or so away from the Hoopers' new house.
I'd take a deep breath as a kid. I'd be probably 12 years old and say, that Ivan Watkins smells good, you know.
As a young man, Gary Hooper worked across the road from the plant and would later work directly with the herbicide 2,4-D. At 28 years old, he literally woke up paralysed and has suffered the effects of a peripheral nervous disorder ever since.
If people aren't affected by it, they don't kind of believe it, and the people that should be believing it, well, they're just turning a blind eye to it.
I have lost one of our children, which I put down to 2,4-D, being it's something you really don't like talking about.
Bill French's son Scott survived for 10 days. He was born with no esophagus and Down syndrome. Bill now lives in the Coromandel, but he used to live in New Plymouth. His job, emptying bags of the herbicide 2,4-D into fertiliser. He has holes in his intestine, an enlarged heart and skin cancers. But his health is the least of his worries.
I have a daughter that's quite badly affected with cancer with it. But
how old is she?
She's 38. And another one's lost a lung.
6 of his grandchildren also have illnesses or deformities.
But it just seems to go on and on in the family. It's
You also lost your wife?
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's wrecked your whole life, Bill?
Yep. I'm not the only poor bugger. There's other poor buggers out there as well. My problem's only a problem, I know. compared to some of the others. At least I can still get around.
Eyesight's gone, loss of legs, limbs and whatever are deteriorating all the time. And it probably won't be long before my speech will go too.
Roy Drake is 56. He believes his multiple sclerosis is a result of growing up by the Ivan Watkins Dowell plant and working most of his life in or near the place. How would you sum up the effect it's had on your life?
It's wrecked it completely. I might as well be dead.
But the big problem facing these people is, how do you prove your illness, disease or birth defects are linked to dioxin contamination from the Ivan Watkins Dowell plant 245T or 24D? The first step is a blood serum test to find out if you have elevated levels of dioxin residues in your system. The catch is these tests are specialised and expensive and not routinely available through our Ministry of Health. So for most people, a serum test is out of the question. It all adds up to a demoralising equation to those convinced their lives have been destroyed.
What I want is the people of New Zealand and New Plymouth to understand that dioxin poisoning is real. It really has happened, and there are real, innocent, good people who have been exposed to a wicked chemical which has now debilitated or killed them.
50-year-old Gary Green is a Kiwi living in Perth. He has proof he's been poisoned. The Australian medical system paid for his blood serum tests. His level of dioxins were around 6 times what they should be.
It's a horrific chemical that enters your body without you knowing about it and begins to slowly deteriorate every system and attack it. For me, it's attacked my endocrine system. It's attacked my gastric system. It attacks your immune system. My immune system is shot. It doesn't work. I mean, I've got sores that don't heal.
So, Gary, it almost sounds like you're stuffed.
Yeah, basically you could say I'm a more doodah than you can poke a stick at when it comes to my health.
In the mid-80s, Gary came to New Plymouth and worked here at a company called Steel and Tube. Just over the way, Ivan Watkins Dowell were producing 245T and 24D. It is hard, though, to comprehend, because what you're saying is that you got hit with something that you didn't see 20 years ago.
That's right.
When you were working here in New Plymouth.
Absolutely.
And you've gone on and had your life, and now you've got an illness so far down the track.
Yes, that's right. That's the insidious nature of this chemical, is that it doesn't give you an immediate response. It just gets inside you and begins to do its nasty work to the point it gets bit by bit until it actually gains control or overtakes. It's like as if it short circuits everything and everything just does not work properly. You know, and it's just like as if it's a virus that's been sent to undo you.
It's a human rights issue. These people have had their DNA blown apart by that plant.
For more than a decade, Andrew Gordon-Gibbs has been an advocate for people who believe they've been poisoned by the Ivan Watkins Dowell plant.
And the ironic thing, I think, is that many of them don't want to sue. All they want is healthcare and recognition. This would probably cost less than what our government spent covering it up over the years.
It was the mid-60s when the Midland, Michigan branch of chemical giant Dow US bought into the locally owned Ivan Watkins plant in New Plymouth. It was renamed Ivan Watkins Dowell. As we know, a large portion of their business was producing the agricultural chemicals 245T and 24D. Separately, they were known as herbicides. Mixed together, they were known as Agent Orange. In the Vietnam War, the US Defence Force sprayed 44 million litres of Agent Orange, 245T and 24D. In comparison, New Zealand used an estimated 20 million litres. Kiwis considered the herbicides an agricultural wonder product.
Air spraying thistles, for instance, costs just 1/5 of a ground spraying job.
Used from Kaitaia to Bluff, nearly 200,000 acres a year of rough country was being cleared, and that's just from the air.
One of these flying pack horses can do the work of 200 men, if you could find 200 men.
But there was a problem, a big problem. These herbicides contained an unwanted byproduct, a dioxin contaminant, which many scientists believe can mutate genes, damage DNA, and be passed down through generations of families. Our Ministry of Health says claims of multi-generational effects aren't widely accepted scientifically. But Andrew Gordon-Gibbs says the ministry should just take a look at families who lived in Paritutu when the plant was in full swing.
Many of them have 3 generations of health problems. Many of them have lost multiple people in one family, and most of them have moved away. A lot of them no longer live here.
It's often said, look, that was then and this is now.
Well, I think the big thing is here when you have people passing away in their teens from a range of ailments that lived here back then, if you're one of those families, it's very much now.
I think that the system would like to delay and stall and evade the reality of this issue till it all passed away. That's a cheaper option, I'm sure.
From 1965 until 1971, a matron at the West Town Maternity Hospital in New Plymouth started seeing deformities at a rate she had never seen before in 29 years of maternity work. Again, we warn you the following pictures are extremely disturbing. So alarmed at the extent and severity of the deformities, the matron meticulously began recording the evidence over 6 years, collating statistics, having each baby photographed. The horrendous deformities turning up in New Plymouth mirrored those in Vietnam, where 2,4,5-T and 2,4-D were being mixed together as Agent Orange and used in warfare. From the mid-60s to early 70s, New Plymouth, home of the Ivan Watkins Dale factory, had the highest birth defects in New Zealand. But by now, birth defects nationwide had doubled and in some cases tripled. Health officials said the increase was due to better reporting in maternity hospitals. It was never suggested, not publicly anyway, that the dramatic increase in birth defects nationwide coincided with New Zealand's heaviest exposure to deadly dioxin contaminants from agrochemicals. The New Plymouth matron says she gave the findings of her study of over 5,000 babies to what is now the Ministry of Health. They say they have never received it. Whatever the case, it wouldn't see the light of day for 30 years, when it was finally reviewed by Taranaki Health. At New Plymouth Maternity Hospital, it was found neural tube birth defects in babies from Paritutu were 3.5 times the national level, but concluded it was not statistically significant. Back at the time of the matron's concerns, though, parents of deformed babies were told the cause was anything from their genetics being mismatched to it being an act of God.
When he was born, the nurse that was with our doctor, when they couldn't get the tube into his tummy, The nurse turned around and said, "Good God, not another one," just like that. And they operated on him several times to try and fix the problem, but it must have been just too much for him.
And your son?
He was born with a cleft palate, and the other one just started developing early, precocious puberty, they call it.
So what if you had the opportunity to be in the Ivan Watkins-Dale boardroom?
Ivan Watkins' boardroom? You'd have to hold me down, I think. Yeah. You'd have to hold me down, because I'd have a drum of drenching and drench every one of them with neat 2,4-D or 2,4,5-T. Take that. Now fix your problem, because that's what the government, the doctors, the hospitals, everyone's told us over the years. There's nothing wrong with us, you know.
I think you just got to die, and then they probably still won't believe you. So,
Do you feel guilty?
with the children, what I did, yeah, I do. Yep. Some of my kids have told me that if I didn't work with the bloody stuff, they wouldn't have those problems that they've got today. So, you know, I just find it hard to explain how to put all this. It's affected me, and that's all I can say.
And your kids?
And my children.
And your wife?
And my wife, yeah. Which is pretty hard to swallow over all these years, and things just get worse and worse as it goes down the track.
Coming up next, did those in authority know that these herbicides could potentially poison generations of Kiwi families? And if they did, why didn't they tell us?